Okay. So apparently it was a lifelike, although it was not mechanized. So though it was not an automatic doll, right? It was not automatic. You must have seen automatic toys which have a certain mechanism inside it and they dance and sing automatically, right? Or rather walk automatically. So, but this doll was not a mechanized one. It was possible to bend and twist its limbs, but still what you could do is you could bend and twist the limbs of that doll. It was possible to do that. Its face had a smile on it, and on its head it wore a swish cap with a little yellow feather sticking out from it. So the entire attire of that doll was resembled a swish person, right? So it had a cap, it was wearing a cap, and on that there was a feather, right? Yellow colored feather which was sticking out from that cap. Its clothes, especially in the little details, were perfect: belt, button, pockets, collar, socks. So everything was perfect. Whosoever made that that doll paid minute attention to everything, right? Normally, these things are absent, like the belt, buttons, pockets were also there. Then collar, socks, everything was there in that doll, in that dress, attire of that doll, included everything. There were even little buckles on the shoe. So just imagine the how detailed the doll was, like. So even the minutest thing like the buckle of the shoe was attached to that doll. So this paragraph is important, rather you will have to learn it, because this contains the, you can say, the most important character of the story, that is Fritz. His uncle had returned from Europe shortly before Jayanto left for Pune with his parents. The little old man had been bought in the village in Switzerland. So this paragraph tells from where did this Jayanto come, the place of origin of this Jayanto. So from where did his uncle get that doll? His uncle bought that doll from a village in Switzerland. The man who sold him had jokingly said to Jayanto's uncle, "He's called Fritz. You must call him by this name. He won't respond to any other." So please mark this. This is important. You have to learn this line. You can quote it. He's called Fritz. So the person who sold that doll to Jayanto's uncle, he told Jayanto's uncle, though it was said in a very humorous manner, he was just joking, he was not serious about it. But he told Jayanto's uncle that whenever you want to talk to this doll or whenever you are addressing this doll, please call it by Fritz only. If you will call it by any other name, then this doll won't respond. Jayanto said, "I had a lot of toys when I was small. My parents gave me practically everything I wanted. Perhaps because I was their only child." So these lines tell us that he was the only child, so he must be pampered. He had practically everything. Right? This is what happens to single children in the family. Right? All their demands are fulfilled. So the same was the case with Jayanto as a child. So he was a very pampered child. He had many toys. But once I had Fritz, I forgot all my other toys. But what happened when Fritz came into the life of this person, Jayanto, that he forgot about all his other toys. Right? So this is important. Right? Being a child, being a single child, being a pampered child, there was no scarcity of toys in his life. He had many of them. But once Fritz came into his life, he forgot about all his other toys. And Fritz became the most important toy in his life. He played only with him. So once he got Fritz, he played only with Fritz. A time came when I began to spend hours just talking to him. So he used to spend many hours in a day just talking to Fritz. Our conversation had to be one-sided, of course. But Fritz had such a funny smile on his lips and such a look in his eyes that it seemed to me as understand every word. So Fritz was a very expressive dog. Though Fritz didn't talk, but still there was such a funny expression on his face that Jayanto felt that he is kind of getting everything which he is, whatever he is saying to him. He is able to understand whatever Jayanto is talking to him. So Jayanto used to just hold that doll and go on talking to him for hours. So if he was able to talk in German, then definitely he will be able to understand. The doll had that kind of an expression on his face. Now it seems like a childish fantasy. What is a childish fantasy? The imagination of a child, right? So now if I think about the way I behaved with that doll, the way I used to be absorbed in that doll so much, the way I was mesmerized with that doll, if I think about it today, this is what Jayanto is saying, that if I think about it today, then it seems to me that it's just a child's fantasy, that it was just a, you can say, imagination of a child. It's not logical, right? This is what happens with many of us. You behave in a particular manner, you are obsessed with something at one point of time in your life, and once that phase passes away, and maybe 5 years or 10 years from that time, if you think about that obsession, that past obsession of yours, how do you feel? Most of the time you would rather smile, or you would think how stupid I was to behave in such a manner for such a small reason. Does it happen with you people? I mean, it happens a lot with me.
Pratiksha,
Yes. So he was, you could say, completely spellbound by that toy which he got. That was Fritz. A time came when I began to spend, we have done this. So that it seemed to me as though he had understood every word. Sometimes I wondered if he would actually converse with me if I had speak to him, if I could speak to him in German. So at times, Gento felt that if he could talk to that doll in German, then Fritz would definitely understand and even like start replying. So converse means both sides. So this is what Gento felt, that if I knew German and if I start talking to this doll in German, then Fritz may even respond. It was so expressive. Now it seems like a childish fantasy, but at that time the whole thing was very real. I told you, this is like how we feel normally. At one particular point of time, something seems so important to us. We seem so much absorbed in a particular thing, and maybe after a couple of years or after some days, that thing is not at all important to us, right? And we may then laugh at it, right? Or even think ourselves to be like crazy at that time. My parents did warn me not to overdo things, but I listened to no one. So the extent to which he was involved with that doll was so much that his parents had to warn him that you are overdoing things, right? So you need to spend a little lesser time with that doll. Today, children are completely mesmerized with their smartphone. What is your Fritz today? Your smartphones are your Fritz. But I listened to no one. But he refused to listen to anyone. He was so much attracted to that doll. I had not yet been put in the school, so I had all the time in the world for Fritz. And because in those days, at 5 years of age and at 6 years of age, children, they didn't go to school, and so he had all the time in the world to spend with Fritz. Jayanto fell silent. I looked at my watch and realized it was 9:30. So, after telling this, after revealing this information related to Fritz, Jayanto was silent. Jayanto stopped talking. Why did he stop talking? Because then he was transported to that past time, right? When he and Fritz were together. This is what happens, na? When you are reminded of something which you loved, something very much, which you loved very much, and you were very fond of that particular thing at some point of time in your life, and that memory comes back to your mind, you will be like completely lost. So the same thing happened to them. So he, after telling all this to Shankar, he was quiet. I looked at my watch and realized it was 9:30. So Shankar realized that it was 9:30 p.m. They had been talking for a long time. It was very quiet outside. We were sitting in the drawing room of the circuit. An oil lamp burned in the oil lamp was burning. Can you notice all these facts? What is the writer trying to do? Please, you have to like mark these points which are trying to present a scary picture, or which tell you that that horrifying image is created. That the story which you are reading is something which is related to supernatural thing. These facts you will need to note down. There was quiet outside. We were sitting in the drawing room of the circuit house. An oil lamp burnt in the room. Right? An oil lamp burnt in the room means there is not much light in the room. Only one oil lamp is burning. Outside it is very quiet. All these, there are several other places also. In the previous pages also, there are certain words and phrases which tell you that this is something which is related to horror. Please mark it on your own, because they can ask you how do you know that what all words and phrases in the story, what all incidents tell you in the story that it is related to something which is not normal, something which is paranormal, something it is something related to ghost, or it is a macabre thing. I asked, what happened to the dog? So then Jayantu asked that what happened to the dog? He was curious to know now. Sorry, Shankar asked what happened to the dog. Jayantu was still deep in thought. The answer to my question came so late that by that time I had started to think that he had not heard me. So Jayantu didn't respond when Shankar asked him that what happened to the doll. Where is that doll now? I had brought it to Bhumi. It was destroyed here. Destroyed? How? So he said that he took so much time because slowly the memories they are coming into his mind. So he is like taking time to respond because everything is being played like a videotape in his mind. As Shankar is asking a question, so he will move from one part of the story to another in his mind, and then he will answer. So he took a lot of time to answer. And by that time, Shankar started feeling that he has not heard his question. He is completely engrossed in his memories that he failed to hear the question. This is what Shankar started believing. But at that moment, Jayanto answered his question. I brought it to Bundi and it was destroyed here. So the doll was destroyed at Bundi. Destroyed? How? So now Shankar wanted to know how was it destroyed. Jayanto sighed. Sigh, take a deep breath. This is sigh. We were sitting out on the lawn having tea. So this paragraph contains the description how Fritz was destroyed. This again contains the important facts. Please, when you are writing the answers, don't concoct or create your own story. I don't want any revised edition of the chapter or of the story or of the play. Because these are the answers which I am getting. We were sitting out on the lawn having tea. I had kept the doll by my side on the ground. So we collected everything, and what happened, how the doll was destroyed. He was sitting in the garden and having tea with his parents, and the doll was placed next to him. Maybe he was sitting on the chair and the doll was kept on the ground. I was not really old enough to have tea, but I insisted on. And in the process, the cup tilted and some of the hot tea fell on my hands. So what must have happened was that maybe he was like being adamant on having tea. He was just arguing with his parent, no, I want to have tea, I want to have tea, and he must be pulling the cup, right? The parents must be stopping him. No, you should not have tea. You are too young to have tea. And maybe this was going on. Then what happened all of a sudden? That hot tea fell on his hands. I ran inside to change and came back to find that Fritz had disappeared. So, because it was hot tea which fell on his pants, so he rushed inside the house to wash it, clean it. And then when he came back, after doing so, what happened? Fritz was missing from that place. I looked around and found quite soon that a couple of the stray dogs means the dogs which are not owned by anyone, the street dogs. What did he see? That all these stray dogs were having a nice tug of war. What is a tug of war? That they were pulling the doll, right? 2-3 dogs, they were just holding Fritz in their mouth, and each one of them wanted to possess it. So there was a tug of war going on, means pulling in opposite direction. So a couple of dogs, so 2 dogs, they were pulling the doll in opposite direction. Although he didn't actually come apart, his face was battered. Now, do you notice here that he is not addressing the doll as it? He is addressing the doll as he. What does this tell you? That this doll, this Fritz, was very much alive for Jayanto at that time. And even now, because now he is narrating the story and he is addressing the doll as he. Right? Said, found quite soon that, yes, and although he didn't actually come apart, he is for Fritz. Though Fritz was not torn into pieces, broken into pieces, means hands and limbs and legs, everything here and there. Though it didn't happen, but what happened to the doll? His face was battered. But because of this pulling and because of this tug of war between the dogs, what happened? His face was battered. What is the meaning of battered? It was injured, right? When you injure someone by repeatedly hitting or by repeated blows, then that is known as battered. So his face was battered beyond recognition. So his face was destroyed to the extent that he was not even able to recognize from the face that it is the same Fritz. And his clothes were torn. And even his clothes were torn. In other words, Fritz did not exist for me anymore. He was dead. So here again, he was dead. He's saying that the doll was dead now. So this means that he is not taking it to be a toy. Earlier also, first paragraph, if you study the first paragraph of this page, there also you will come to know that he always used to had a conversation with that doll, though it was a one-way thing. The doll didn't reply. But he always tried to talk to that doll. Right? So when he saw this condition of Fritz, he decided that now Fritz doesn't exist for me. Fritz is dead. And then Jayanto's story intrigued. And at this point, intrigued me means arouse interest. So now Shankar also started finding this story of Jayanto very interesting. His interest was also aroused in Jayanto's story. So now he wanted to know what happened next. What could possibly happen after that? I arranged. So he said that, and then what did he do? At that moment, you considered Fritz to be dead. So then what did you do? What could possibly happen after that? I arranged funeral. That's all. So he said, what could have I done after that? I simply arranged the funeral because he treated him like as a living thing. So he arranged the funeral. Meaning, so again, this was something which was beyond Shankar's understanding. Now, these things tell you something more. That the difference in the nature of these two people. What can you know? What can you understand about Jayanto from these lines? That Jayanto was a very emotional person. a very sensitive person. He gave a lot of importance to his emotions. And what about Shankar? When he said that I arranged the funeral of Fritz, he said, meaning? Means what do you mean? How can you arrange a funeral of a doll? So we fail to understand. What does this show? That he is a person with a practical bent of mind. He's very rational, very logical. You will again come to know at several places in this story, several incidents in this story further, which will come across further. They will tell us that he was a very practical person. I hope we should end the class here. We have already exceeded the time, and we'll continue with it. I have to finish this tomorrow. I don't know how. So thank you.